Section number 6 of The Haunted Hour, an anthology by Margaret Widdemer. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Matt Benzing, Oxford, Ohio. Shadowy Heroes. Ballad of the Buried Sword by Ernest Rhys. In a winter's dream, on Gamlin Moor, I found the lost grave of Lord Glyndwr. I followed 3 shadows against the moon that marched while the thin reed whistled the tune. 3 swordsmen they were, out of Harry's wars, that made a Welsh song of their Norman scars. But they sang no longer of Agincourt when they came to a grave, for there lay Glyndwr. Said the one, "My sword, thou'rt rust, my dear, I but brought thee home to break thee here." And the second, "Aye, here is the narrow home to which our tired hearts are come." And the third, "We are all that are left, Glyndwr, to guard thee now on Gamlin Moor." Straightway I saw the dead forth stand, his good sword bright in his right hand, and the marsh reeds with a whistling sound to 1,000 grey swordsmen were turned around. The moon did shake in the south to see the dead man stand with his soldiery. But the brighter his sword, the grave before, turned its gate of death to a radiant door. Therein the 1,000 before their lord marched at the summons of his bright sword. Then the night grew strange, the blood left my brain, and I stood alone by the grave again. But brightly his sword still before me shone across the dark moor as I passed alone. And still it shines, a silver flame, against the dark of the Cymriac shame. The Looking-Glass by Rudyard Kipling. The queen was in her chamber, and she was middling old. Her petticoat was of satin, and her stomacher was gold. Backwards and forwards and sideways did she pass, making up her mind to face the cruel looking-glass. The cruel looking-glass that will never show a lass as comely or as kindly or as young as what she was. The queen was in her chamber, a combing of her hair. There came Queen Mary's spirit, and it stood behind her chair, singing, "Backwards and forwards and sideways may you pass, but I will stand beside you till you face the looking-glass. The cruel looking-glass that will never show a lass as lovely or unlucky or as lonely as I was." The queen was in her chamber, a-weeping very sore. Then came Lord Leicester's spirit, and it scratched upon the door, singing, "Backwards and forwards and sideways may you pass, but I will walk beside you till you face the looking-glass. The cruel looking-glass that will never show a lass as hard and unforgiving and as wicked as you was." The queen was in her chamber, her sins were on her head. She looked the spirits up and down, and statelily she said, "Backwards and forwards and sideways though I've been, yet I am Harry's daughter, and I am England's queen." And she faced the looking-glass, and whatever else there was, and she saw her day was over, and she saw her beauty pass. In the cruel looking-glass that can always hurt a lass more hard than any ghost there is, or any man that was. Drake's Drum by Henry Newbolt. "Drake he's in his hammock, and 1,000 miles away. Captain, art thou sleeping there below? Slung atween the round shot in Nombre Dios Bay, and dreaming all the time of Plymouth Hoe. Yonder looms the island, yonder lie the ships, with sailor lads a-dancing heel and toe, and the shorelight flashing, and the night tide dashing. He sees it all so plainly as he saw it long ago. Drake, he was a Devon man, and ruled the Devon seas. Captain, art thou sleeping there below? Roving though his death fell, he went wi' heart of ease, and dreaming all the time of Plymouth Hoe. Take my drum to England, hang it by the shore, strike it when your powder's running low. If the dawn sight Devon, I'll quit the port o' heaven, and drum them up the channel as we drummed them long ago. Drake he's in his hammock till the great armadas come. Cap'n, art thou sleeping there below? Slung atween the round shot, listening for the drum, and dreaming all the time of Plymouth Hoe. Call him on the deep sea, call him up the sound, call him when ye sail to meet the foe. Where the old trade's plying, and the old flag flying, they shall find him ware and waken as they found him long ago. The Grey Ghost by Francis Carlin. From year to year there walks a ghost in grey, through misty Connemara in the west, and those who seek the cause of his unrest need go but to the death dumb in the clay, to those that fell defiant in the fray among the boggy wilds of Ireland, blessed by Cromwell, when his puritanic jest left hell and Connaught open on their way. As I have heard, so may the stranger hear, that he who drove the natives from the lawn must wander o'er the marsh and foggy fen, until the Irish gather with a cheer in Dublin of the Parliaments at dawn. God rest the ghost of Cromwell's dust. Amen. Ballad of Douglas Bridge by Francis Carlin. On Douglas Bridge I met a man who lived adjacent to Strabane, before the English hung him high for riding with O'Hanlon. The eyes of him were just as fresh as when they burned within the flesh, and his bootlegs widely walked apart from riding with O'Hanlon. God save you, sir, I said with fear, you seem to be a stranger here. Not I, said he, nor any man who rides with Count O'Hanlon. I know each glen from North Tyrone to Monaghan, and I've been known by every clan and parish since I rode with Count O'Hanlon. Before that time, said he with pride, my fathers rode where now they ride as rapparees before the time of Trouble and O'Hanlon. Good night to you, and God be with the tellers of the tale and myth, for they are of the spirit stuff that rides with Count O'Hanlon. Good night to you, said I, and God be with the chargers fairy shod that bear the Ulster's heroes forth to ride with Count O'Hanlon. On Douglas Bridge we parted, but the gap o' dreams is never shut to one whose settled soul tonight rides out with Count O'Hanlon. The Indian Burying Ground by Philip Freneau. In spite of all the learned have said, I still my old opinion keep. The posture that we give the dead points out the soul's eternal sleep. Not so the ancients of these lands. The Indian, when from life released, again is seated with his friends and shares again the joyous feast. His imaged birds and painted bowl and venison for a journey dressed bespeak the nature of the soul, activity that wants no rest. His bow for action ready bent, and arrows with a head of stone, can only mean that life is spent and not the old ideas gone. Thou stranger, that shalt come this way, no fraud upon the dead commit. Observe the swelling turf and say, they do not lie, but here they sit. Here still a lofty rock remains, on which the curious eye may trace, now wasted half by wearing reins, the fancies of a ruder race. Here still an aged elm aspires, beneath whose far projecting shade, and which the shepherd still admires, the children of the forest played. There oft a restless Indian queen, pale Sheba with her braided hair, and many a barbarous form is seen to chide the man that lingers there. By midnight moons or misting dews, in habit of the chase arrayed, the hunter still the deer pursues, the hunter and the deer a shade. And long shall timorous fancy see the painted sheaf and pointed spear. The reason's self shall bow the knee to shadows and delusions here. End of section 6. Recorded for LibriVox by Matt Benzing of Oxford, Ohio.